Hello and welcome to BNTV Week 6, and there's lots to talk about this week. At the weekend, David Haye came back after a year's absence from the ring in that controversial contest, and he showed he still got it when he knocked out Derek Chisora, who was stopped for the first time. Amir Khan's career was sent into crisis point by Danny Garcia in a shocking result in Las Vegas. To talk about the weekend's events, we've got editor Tris Dixon and managing editor Daniel Herbert. Now we'll start with the events at Upton Park in the East End of London. David Haye, I was there. He really impressed me, Dan. I mean, where does this rate in his heavyweight performances?
Well, I guess right up there. It could even be his best win at the weight when you compare to people like Audley Harrison, who's not really world class. Derek Chisora is a very tough guy. Mimic's in very good company, and he's lost a couple of fights recently. So not just to beat him, but to dispatch him in such fine style in 5 rounds is a really good performance for Haye.
I'd probably put it alongside the Ruiz fight. He did a bit of a destruction job on another durable heavyweight. It shows that, I think when you look at some of the heavyweights like Vitaly Klitschko and so forth, they're very strong. They've got these battering ram shots. I think what Haye shows is that it's the shots you don't see and the explosive power that heavyweights find hard to deal with. I still think Haye's best win, and people might disagree with me, is on away soil against Valiev when he won the WBA title. I think that was an outstanding win because he followed the game plan and won by a wide margin, certainly on my scorecard at the time. But I think the win over Chisora was an impressive performance, and it ranks alongside like the destruction of the likes of, maybe to a lesser extent, Monty Barrett, but certainly John Ruiz.
Yeah, he mentioned the Ruiz fight afterwards, and he mentioned he wasn't in great shape for that, and he said that if he'd have been in similar shape against Chisora may have beaten him, and I thought Chisora was good. I mean, but Haye now, he's come back into the rankings, and where do we put him in the rankings? Do the likes of Adamek and Chris Arreola, does he jump above those?
You start to look at their best wins, don't you? And so I think his best win was the Valiev win. I think at the time Valiev was about number 4 in our rankings. And when you weigh in the inactivity which counts against him, I think we're going to have him sitting just below Povetkin, who was fortunate to get a win over Marco Huck. But obviously, as things stand, it's pretty much the Klitschko brothers and everyone else.
Do you think Haye deserves that spot above Adamek? Do you think he's the leading contender now at the non-belt holders?
I think so, yeah. In the heavyweight division is really the Klitschkos and everybody else. It's sort of 2 divisions in one. Yeah. And Haye is at or very close to the top of the 2nd division, below the Klitschkos.
Do you think he deserves a shot at the Klitschko? Does just beating Chisora so convincingly make him the leading contender? Does he deserve a shot at the Klitschkos? Well,
there's quite a few guys fighting the Klitschkos who probably don't deserve a shot, but they have to fight somebody, and he's as good as anybody else.
Yeah. And I think when you look at the other guys, and I know this isn't how you do rankings or anything like that, but I wouldn't fancy Adamek lasting 7 or 8 rounds with David Haye. I really wouldn't. And then Chagov, I think might go the distance, but I can see Haye beating him. So, I think, and I mean, when it comes to excitement and a fight that people can latch onto, David will always sell well against the Klitschkos, whereas someone like an Adamek who's already been bashed up in a one-sided fight against Vitaly, I think where there's a backstory with Haye and Vitaly as well, I think that would come into it and would make it an appealing fight. But I think there's some seriously hard bargaining to be done by both sides, and I think that could make it very, very difficult to make.
Yeah. I mean, he has stated that he'll only fight a Klitschko, which to me is a shame. I mean, given the talent that we've got in the country, he's shown. I mean, the Chisora fight was enthralling. It was exciting. But there's also Tyson Fury out there. There's David Price out there. How big could those fights be? I mean, this fight was huge. Dan, do you think arguably that a Fury fight or a Price fight could be even bigger?
I certainly think so, yeah. Because Fury is always unbeaten. Comes in with that tag. I mean, probably not as durable as Chisora, but he's a big man. Certainly a lot bigger than the guys Haye's been fighting, apart from Valiev. So you can make a case for Fury winning that fight. David Price also, very good amateur. Yeah. Good skills, unbeaten as well. That's always a good tag to bring into a heavyweight fight, and Haye will probably take those fights because he's probably convinced he can beat them. So definitely, yeah, there could be big fights for British boxing. Yeah, but who will promote them and which authority? Those are the questions. But
Yeah, I mean, I've read something that Hay and Price have both ruled themselves out of fighting each other. But ultimately, in the world of David Hay, money obviously talks very, very loudly. I mean, do you think that Hay would take those fights? If
No, not in the immediate future. I don't see him, and this is no disrespect to Price or Fury, but I don't see him dropping back down to domestic level. I mean, what I'd like to see David do, which I think he's got no intention of doing, but is to bash up some of the other contenders, to put more pressure on Vitali. I'd like to see him try and take out Seth Mitchell. I'd like to see him try and bash up Chris Arreola and a couple of the other guys that would make for fun fights too, because you know David does make for exciting fights generally when he wants to get involved with the opponent. So I think though that kind of opponent are the sort of people I'd like to see him mixing in with. I still think Fury and Price both need a lot of seasoning before they start talking up world titles and that kind of level.
Okay, Dan. I mean, looking at the loser of the fight, Derek Chisora, again, he came out of a contest. If you just take his, you know, if over the last few fights, if you just take what was going on inside the ring, again, he's lost a fight, but he's come out of it with credit. He performed well, but he's now lost 4 out of his last 5. You can make a strong case that Helenius beat him, but he's lost 4 out of 5. What is next for Derek Chisora?
Well, Chisora's problem is that he has world-class durability and strength and stamina even, but doesn't have world-class skills, so it can be very difficult to match now, other than as an opponent or a stepping stone. Now he's been stopped, as well as just losing on points. Other heavyweight contenders or pretenders will look at him and think, this is a guy I can fight with a pretty good chance of beating him. So he has a dilemma now, Derek Chisora. Does he take those fights, or does he look for easy fights that he thinks he can win? Then they pay less money than the fights he's getting now. So is he in it for the glory or for the money? He has a big choice to make now.
Yeah, I think you know, if I was managing Derek, I'd like him to take a long break. You know, like you say, he's lost 4 of the last 5. 3 of them were 12 rounders, and then there's been this damaging stoppage. So I think he needs a long break. I mean, there's already talk about him possibly fighting David Price at the start of next year, which will be a really tough assignment for him. And, you know, I'd like to see him brought back with, you know, certainly a warm-up win, and then, you know, stepping in against. I know he's fought Sam Sexton a couple of times, but someone in that sort of mould, or maybe you know, a peripheral American guy. So, you know, I'd like to see him sort of be nurtured back rather than be stuck back in the deep.
Yeah, I think there's opportunities for him on both sides of the Atlantic now. He's got his name, hasn't he? But
well, the interesting thing with Chisora now is the licensing. Yeah, you know, because obviously he's not licensed by the Border Control. It'd be very doubtful that he'd get a license now. He's gone ahead and fought under a Luxembourg license, so he's going to be looking for opportunities elsewhere. But you know, I'm sure there's plenty of work for him. You know, Germans love their heavyweights, and so, you know, I'm sure there's scope for him to work down there. Obviously, Frank Warren's got a close relationship with the Sauerlands, who have their fights on Box Nation. So, you know, there's scope for some fights down there too.
What's made him such an appealing opponent? I mean, there's not so long ago he was screaming for attention. He wanted a British title shot, and in the last year, his name is really quite big. Is it his behaviour outside the ring? Is it the fact that he always gives a good fight? What do you think it is that makes Derek Chisora the well-known figure that he suddenly is now?
Well, he does get involved in good fights, but even if he's started to lose them recently. And it's strange, he's not particularly articulate or funny or witty in the way that, say, David Hay is, or even Orley Harrison, but he just says things that maybe gets people's backs up. I mean, go back to the early days of Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay. People often tuned in to see him lose, even though he turned out to be a great fighter. And Chisora's not in that class in terms of skill or personality, but the same thing. People will buy tickets or turn on the TV or radio and think, yeah, I want to see this guy get smacked in the face by a big heavyweight, and it's part of boxing. It's a business, it's entertainment, it's about putting bums on seats, generating interest, and he does that even if it's in a negative way.
Do you think he plays up to it, Tris, because he comes into the ring with a mask on and he's getting roundly booed and he just stands there like some kind of...
Yeah, I think he plays it. I think he plays up to he plays the part of it, but you know, I think what sells is unpredictability. You know, people don't know what's going to happen next. You know, I don't even know if Derek knows what's going to happen next some of the time. So, you know, it's the unpredictability. You know, it's kind of like we had it with Herbie Hyde, and to a massive extent, you know, with Mike Tyson, where people will go to the fights, people will go to the weigh-ins not knowing what's going to happen. and you know, it arouses interest because you're there watching their every move, waiting for something outrageous to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Chisora's part of an interesting British bunch at the moment, isn't he? If you take Chisora, David Haye, Tyson Fury, David Price, it's a pretty healthy heavyweight division domestically, isn't it? How does it compare to other eras where, you know, the 1970s where we had the Bugners and what have you, going around the 60s with Richardson, Cooper, and how do you think it compares, Dan?
We probably have to go back to the late 50s, early 60s for the last period when you had maybe half a dozen heavyweights of top quality. Cooper, Bygraves and Dave Richardson, Erskine, you know, there's quite a few guys who fought each other. Although they all ultimately fell short at the world title level when there's only one world champion.
I think that's the key thing. I think the key thing is it's a great division if they all fight each other. I mean, in the 90s we had the light middleweights in the UK. We had Steve Roberts, Wayne Alexander, Takaloo, and Richard Williams, and you know, it's almost like a completely wasted opportunity. I think Takaloo and Wayne Alexander fought when they were both slightly over the hill. And you know, it's all very well having all these good names in a division, but unless they're fighting each other, we're not really making use of it. And it's going to be hard to see how you can negotiate deals for Haye and Fury and Chisora and Price, who've got all different allegiances, to fight one another. So it's frustrating because I think we'd all like to see fights involving all of those.
Subscribe today to Boxing News. Pay less than £1.92 per issue. Never miss out. You'll be guaranteed every issue. Fast and free delivery direct to your door. Be the first in the know. We're the world's only weekly boxing magazine. For more information on how to become a subscriber and for all our great offers, please visit our website today, www.boxingnewsonline.net.